started. Happy New Year, everybody, though it feels like it's an old New Year already to some extent. You know, I haven't been here in a couple of months, had some issues going on, so for those of you who don't know me around the audience, I'm Maria Garcia-Berry. Liz has been doing a yeoman's job to helping keep this going, but why don't we do this real quickly, because we have a lot of audience members, which I think we ought to have introduced. Why don't committee members go around the room really quickly and introduce themselves, and then we'll go to the audience, okay? So, Ms. Cramp, you get to start.
I haven't been here for a while, I'm so glad to be back with you.
We are very glad to see you back.
And I'm in Swansea. It has an area, but I am actually Swansea.
Candice de Vaca, Swansea resident.
I'm Katie McKenna from Habitat for Humanity in Living Globeville.
Mickey Zeppelin from Rhino and Taxi.
John Suppian from Globeville, and I want to make a little announcement here. I have a petition for the naming of the park across the river, and I want to leave some around so people can sign it, but you have to live in Denver. Okay? Thank you.
Nancy Grandis Jones, JJJ Properties, Globeville, and Globeville Civic Partners.
Vernon Hills, JJJ Properties, Globeville.
Ron Rohr, National Western Stock Show.
Larry Burgess, Business Association of Property owner of Bright Boulevard.
Alice Brooks, Denver City Council.
Juan Veloz, de Lidia y Swansea.
Michael Samula, Family Environmental and Rhino.
Hi, Drew Dutcher, Leary and Swansea Neighborhood Association and a Leary resident.
Karen Elizabeth, Globeville.
Armando Payan, Globeville.
Patricia Carmody, Colorado Watershed Assembly.
Get all the members?
Ann Hayes, Westfield Company Developers.
Here you go.
I'm Maxine Chikawa, I'm from the Swansea area.
Tom Anthony from Elyria.
Nancy Kerr, Sky Brown.
Tim Maley with CHS. We're a Fortune 100 agricultural company.
David Trujillo, Blue Line Building Services, Denver.
Caitlin Randall, Strategies 360, here on behalf of Superior Farms.
Good afternoon, Willie Franklin with CH2M.
Hello there, Rusty Collins with Colorado State University Extension Office here in Denver.
Patrick O'Keefe with CH2M.
Hi, my name is Lauren Bell, and I'm a Denver resident in the DUC.
Erica Martinez, and I'm with the National Western Center Communications.
Eric Anderson with CH2M.
Karen Nakundakari with CH2M.
Michael.
Good evening, Michael Sabb with the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center in North Denver, Cornerstone Collaborative.
All right, so with that, Mr. Lead, you're first on the agenda under National Western Center updates.
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's cold in here. It's freezing.
Well, I'll just do partner updates while we're setting this up.
Okay.
So you all, okay. Kelly Lead, I'm Executive Director of the Mayor's Office.
It's not on.
Western Center. I'll figure out how to run the mic. Okay, let's try that again. Kelly Lee, Executive Director, Mayor's Office of the National Western Center. Happy New Year to all of you. Hope you had a good holiday season. In terms of just partner updates, I'm going to save a lot for just the work plan update, but needless to say, this is a very big year for this project and for this effort in ramping up for actually starting to see things happen. We've been very focused on land acquisition this last year, and again, we'll be equally focused on it this year. But this is a year where all the component parts start to come together. All that hard work that so many of you have been a part of will start to become real as we move towards implementation. So from the city side, this last year and this year are really big procurement years. Since almost every effort is running through a city procurement process, which is a big lift for us. So there's been a lot of time just spent kind of running through, thinking through those procurements, and getting them ready to get out and bid, and starting to engage industry about what's in front of us so that they can start to prepare. But that's really where we spent a good portion of our time. We stood up the National Western Center office this last year. We just moved our office from the 6th floor to the 9th floor to start to accommodate the CH2 team, which has been selected as our program team. So just a lot of nuts and bolts things, and then you'll see a lot more here when I do the work plan update. But just a lot of heavy administrative kind of nuts and boltsy things over the course of the last year.
Great. Ron? Here, I'll come to you since you're...
Well, this year at the National Western, we had a real successful year. It was our 3rd highest attendance that we've had in modern history. So we look forward to building and moving forward and planning for the 112th next year. No real new news from us to report other than we've all been busy with Stock Show. It was great. We had great attendance, a lot of positive activity, a lot of positive fun that's come out of it, and just had a great time. I don't have a lot else to add to that.
Okay, and
so Jocelyn Hiddle from CSU was unable to join us this evening, and I am very desperately looking for her written report that I was going to share with you. And I think what we might do is maybe move on in the agenda, and then when I locate it, I apologize. With the changed configuration tonight, I was thrown off a little bit. So what do we have next?
Museum of Asian Science.
Great. Is Nancy here? Oh,
Do you-
Nancy, do you have any report for us tonight?
You're on the agenda already.
Hi. Do you have an announcement for us at all, or a report, or here? Oh, great. I'll give you the mic.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late.
Hi everybody, I'm Nancy Walsh at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and I apologize for being late, but I just wanted to be sure, and I'm out of breath because I ran up the stairs, and I just wanted to be sure that everyone knew about our Girls in Science event, which is free, and it's on Saturday, March 4th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and it's an amazing event, and I really hope that a lot of people will come. So I have these cards and I'll hand them out. That's all I have. Thanks, Liz.
A lot of exercise tonight. Okay. What's next, Maria?
History Colorado. Steve Turner's not here unless somebody from staff that is not, so we'll skip that over.
Great.
So we'll go to the Executive Oversight Committee report. Drew?
Hi, I have to admit I'm a little remiss this month. I didn't bring my notes from the last EOC, which was in December. I believe the EOC did not meet this month, so I don't really have too much to report. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that, but I think that probably Kelly and Albus can also update us if it was otherwise or rather, I'm a better
Kelly?
December, I mean, I think, and I reference this, but obviously, as we closed out 2016, again, the focus really, which started in April of this last year, was land acquisition. So, you know, we have a team of folks within the city. We have a firm called NWC-CAC that is meeting with each of the property owners, working through those closings. And so there, we issue a monthly report on land acquisition, and there are 38 private parcels that we have to acquire, and the goal was trying to get about 50% of those under some level of control by the city, and we were able to get 17 of the 38 under some level of control. And by that I mean we've agreed to terms, we've signed a purchase and sale agreement, or we've actually closed. That's what I mean by control. And so it was we didn't start till April of this last year, and so made really, I think, really good progress, because that's quite frankly our largest risk, or one of our biggest risks for the site, is just getting the site under control, which will create flexibility for us to advance the program. The second, and this is a good segue into the letter, was kind of a hot and cold engagement with the Denver Rock Island Rail. And again, for folks that aren't familiar, we get the good fortune on the site of dealing with all 4 railroads. And you might ask, well, what are those 4 railroads? So I'll start big, I'll go big and go small. So the first is the Burlington Northern. So that's the main line that runs, basically cuts the site in half. They're not going anywhere. They'll be here forever. But to their credit, we did do a deal with them, under the Marion Underpass. That's the piece where you actually walk under the rail, and there were improvements done to that, and there was a good relationship with them on that. The second is the RTD. RTD is building the North Metro line, so we are engaging them pretty frequently on the North Metro line, and that one in parallel to the Burlington Northern. We have a little bit of interaction with the UP, but not much. And then the last is the Denver Rock Island. So Denver Rock Island is a locally owned railroad, and it has tracks that run adjacent to the river, and it has a set of tracks that run down the center of the site. The goal has always been to try to consolidate those tracks down the river so that we can start to create access to the river, and move those to the center of the site down the current or existing National Western Drive. And again, this last year, there were a lot of meetings, but not a lot of progress with the Denver Rock Island. I think the last time we met, things had really kind of gotten pretty cold in terms of our engagement. I'm happy to report that they've re-engaged. We have a team working actively with them. We just had a meeting this last week, in fact, between the Burlington Northern and Denver Rock Island, and there's nothing easy about this project. There's nothing easy about any project we're doing this for the city, and rail's no different. So I think just coming to a common set of understandings, that's where I think you guys are going to go through hopefully a letter of support. You're going to be willing to send. We'll send that to the railroad. But as of right now, we're talking. Things are kind of moving forward, and I'm hopeful that we can make some progress. But I'll be honest, we have to keep reminding them that this creates barriers to the river, it creates barriers to access across the communities, and there's a solution here that will improve their life and the community's life for the better. So we just need to constantly remind them of that, and we'll hopefully get a deal done this year. So those were the big things in December, and then the last was just the report out on the selection of CH2 as part of our program management team, which I will talk about in our update.
And I did locate Jocelyn's report, so I'll just give you highlights from CSU. She reports that the CSU Facilities Department has issued an RFP for program management for CSU's 3 facilities on the National Western Center campus. This team will be helping CSU and Denver Water, in the case of the Water Resources Center, to refine the existing program, and will work closely with CH2M to deliver the buildings. The internal CSU sustainability team, which is experts on water, energy, waste, and trash, have launched their work to do a preliminary analysis of existing resource use based in part on the data collected during the National Western Stock Show. There was actually a 9 News report about that, and I can share that link with everybody. CSU's Temple Grandin Equine Center is working with the National Western Stock Show to host the first exceptional rodeo, or they did do that. There was another 9 News report about that, and we'll get both those links out to members of the committee in the upcoming weeks. The Temple Grandin Equine Center is also going to be offering assisted therapy at the National Western Stock Show once CSU and the National Western Stock Show finalize the lease agreement. And finally, CSU Day at National Western on Saturday, January 14th included Mutton Busters, Cam the Ram, and more than 400 alumni coming to the National Western Stock Show. So that's Jocelyn's report, and she apologizes for not being here tonight. I guess now we're going on to the letter.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda that we'll cover is the review and approve the, hopefully approve the letter from the CAC to the Rock Island. We've gotten comments from 2 members of the committee. AE, you submitted your comments. Is it letter at the table for everybody?
The letter is at the table.
At the table with everybody. AE, if you, unfortunately, AE, we got this and we didn't have a chance to make copies of your edits. So do you want to go ahead and go through sort of your changes?
Oh, sure.
Here, let me get you.
I don't, hang on a second. If you want to keep talking,
Okay. I have the changes right here. Here, we've got except for the last one.
Okay, sorry guys, I didn't think I'd be on the car here, but
Okay, just a couple really brief things on the first page, number 1. Oh, thanks, you just, I didn't realize what you just handed me.
Yeah, that's okay.
I thought, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets down. I'm suggesting rewording that to contributes to the revitalization and modernization of the historically industrial residential neighborhoods of Globeville, Elyria, and Swansea, home to key DRIR rail network crossings. And the 2 thoughts behind that were by hyphenating Elyria Swansea, that's one statistical neighborhood. They're 2 separate and symbiotic historical neighborhoods. And the industrial residential is a historical nature. I just felt it was a more precise wording of the dynamic for people's consideration. And then number 3, the project has unprecedented, I'm suggesting a slight rewording. The project has unprecedented public support. In November 2015, Denver voters across party lines overwhelmingly passed Measure 2C. And then I had just kind of forwarded a question mark about the poll in this day and ages of alternate factual information. I kind of don't like to sign my name to things that aren't specific in origin and source, so I asked for the source of that 80% polled pre-election voted for 2C, and Maria was so kind as to locate the original survey from Hill Research, so we can put a citation. So I'm suggesting that we reword that sentence there to read, after across party lines overwhelmingly passed, okay, it ends with funding to build the first 2 phases of the National Western Center, period. And then for it to read, citywide, 82% of the population polled pre-election by Hill Research consultants listed the South Platte Riverfront as the primary reason for voting in favor of Measure 2C. In the survey that Maria forwarded, it was 82%, which she hadn't recalled. So I'm suggesting those three changes, if people agree.
Okay. Do you want me to just get everybody's
Yeah.
consensus?
Any comments or thoughts by everybody else? Anybody else? We think the changes AE has suggested strengthen the letter and make the letter more precise and accurate. So,
We also have some from Carrie.
why don't you read Carrie's?
Yep.
I don't have my glasses on. That's too small of a print.
So Carrie from Visit Denver couldn't be here tonight, so she sent a couple of suggestions. She recommended or suggested that instead of starting with number 1, that you move number 2 to the top, because the safety issues have been something that everybody has really been focusing on. That was one of her suggestions. The other issue that she wanted to try to add into the paragraph that AE was just talking about on number 3, we talk about bipartisan support. She also wanted to talk about the local and state support through the RTA and the business community. And so, we could add in a little, a couple words there that would expand the scope of the people that have been supportive. So, do people have comments about either of those additions or
general comments about the letter?
So if we do what we've done in the past, it would be that we would make these adjustments to the letter, and then we would sign it, the Citizens Advisory Committee of the National Western Center, and we would forward it on to Forrest Mars at Denver Rock Island.
And list everybody's names.
Yeah, I'll list the names of the people that are here today, and if someone does not want to be listed, if you would let me know that right now. Okay, so consensus is we do the letter, and we'll go ahead and list committee members that are here today. Great.
Is that all right? Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. That's quick.
Kelly?
Okay, so we are going to, I'm going to try to be a little more, since this project is moving into a more formal stage, that will be a little more formal in our reporting, which I think will add to just the documentation and history of our efforts. So obviously tonight's report, some of this, again, I constantly have to remind myself about the scope and scale of this effort that goes well beyond history of the stock show. It's about obviously making sure the stock show is here another 100 years, and it's really modernizing the site to reflect both a place that's about year-round entertainment, a place that's around experiential learning and research, a place that's about growing tourism, a place that's about art and culture, and obviously that it's about being a unique place for the adjoining neighborhoods of Globeville, Elyria, and Swansea. So, and I challenge our team all the time. In fact, we have our guiding principles from the master plan sitting in our conference room, and every conversation we have always goes back to say, as we advance this, are we living those things we agreed to at a values level? And I think that hopefully will play itself out this year as we move into campus placemaking. But it's a good reminder. It's easy to get really bogged down in the details of the day-to-day stuff and the technical stuff that we have to do, but remind ourselves that there's a bigger purpose here, and an important one around our heritage. You guys have lived this with us, so this is the master plan as adopted in the National Western, and there's the site's growing over time from 130 acres to 250. It will look, the story of this is it will look very different when we're done. And our focus, though, right now is on phases 1 and 2, which really exist between the Burlington Northern and the river. So a lot of focus on the yards, future yards, the Life Science Center, Equestrian Center, and those associated connections. Very focused on the bridge connections across the Platte, one at 51st and one at Betty Cram. And then the improvements to Brighton, kind of the network, to start to reconnect, this donut hole to the adjoining neighborhoods on either side. So, this plan will obviously evolve now that we're starting to add more detail. But again, think about how far we've come when we started this effort together, and that it's a really big kickstart for where we're going to go. So it's always important, I think, too, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is as much a celebration for all of you who've been with us from day one, and the new members that are with us, of how much we accomplished last year out of this office. So I'm going to just quickly run through these, and what I'll do is we'll send this to Liz and the PDF version and post it so you can have it. I'm trying to be more green too in how much paper we produce. But we set up the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center in January of last year by Executive Order 141. We issued the first $200 million from the 2C measure, issued to advance early programming efforts in April. We commenced official campus land acquisition in April. And again, as I referenced earlier, 17 of the 38 parcels were put under some level of control as of December. Short-line rail due diligence really got going, and the engagement started to commence in terms of really understanding what their needs were. A big deal and a big celebration for all of us was the historic designation of the 1909 Stadium Arena. That was done back in July. And then a whole bunch of procurement started to happen. The team that we put in place in January was still relatively small, a handful of folks, and so we started to build up the ability to deliver this rather large program. So one of the first was issuing a program communications and marketing procurement. We issued that in late summer, early fall, and CIG was selected to be our communications and marketing team. And all these were done through a competitive procurement. Then we did a project reporting procurement, and Tri-Unity was selected, and that's actually really a great story. Tri-Unity, it's locally owned, and that Tri-Unity grew out of the Fast Tracks project. So literally they started as a small organization and grew over time in their capacity with Fast Tracks, and now are doing our reporting, because there will be, starting this year, we have just a long list of public reporting we have to start doing. We owe the state our first Regional Tourism Act application report at the end of March, and then we'll start reporting out to City Council, the Governor's Office, and just, like I said, a long laundry list of folks. So Tri-Unity was brought on to help us build those reports and hold us to a schedule around the issuance of those reports. Program management, procurement went out latter part of this last year, and again, very competitive process. CH2M was selected, and we have representatives, and I'd ask Patrick, and I see Willie, and many of you remember Eric Anderson. So we brought part of the band back together and getting Eric Anderson. Stand up, guys. Jeez. All right, so part of the team is here, and we'll devote some time at the February CAC to, because they're not under contract quite yet, but we'll have a report out of the team. And the way this is going to work is it's an embedded structure, so there will be 5 representatives from the CH2 team that will be embedded in the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center, and we're starting to work towards an integrated team that will ultimately be responsible for the delivery of the program. So you'll hear more about that, both from me and then in more detail in February. Brighton Boulevard Segment 3, so that's the segment from 44th to Race Court. We are advancing. We advanced 30% design last year. We will advance 100% design this year, and the goal is to align those improvements. We're focused on the segment from 47th to Race Court. That's the portion we will build, and the goal is to align those improvements with the new RTD station coming online, and the goal is that we build it once. Right, so coordinating with RTD on executing those improvements, temporary and then ultimately permanent ped improvements, and it's all about gaining access to the station, but the goal is to try to do that once. So Wilson Company has been selected to start to do that design work, and all of these will have obviously engagement efforts and updates as we move through the planning process.
Hey, Kelly,
Yep.
I have a question that you can come back to, but it's on that page. Would you like me to hold it, or?
No, go ahead.
Can you fill out a little bit under scope of work what the NWC program communications and marketing is? And can you speak to whether or not the, and I'm going to get the acronym wrong, I think, the CFAS, our financial subcommittee has to do in terms of following and reporting out or reporting into for the project reporting procurement process?
Sure, so CFAC, I mean, I'll start with that question. There's no official role for CFAS under reporting. I mean, we will issue the report to this committee. I mean, it's going to be, these are public documents that we're going to start producing, but CFAS has no official role in terms of that reporting.
Is that the heavy lifting of accountability? That's what that is?
That's correct. This is about multiple sources of revenue coming in and reporting that has to be reflected to city council, to the mayor, to the governor, to ultimately the federal government if we start to get federal grants. It's a heavy lift, but we will have consistent reporting, and so the team is building all the templates now, so everything looks and is organized so that we'll just start to generate reports.
And what is DURA's role? Rural Authority?
Good question. So DURA, that's is tied to the Regional Tourism Act. You had a couple choices in the region, and just for purposes of folks that don't know what that is. So one of the sources of money that we were successful in capturing was what was called the Regional Tourism Act. That was a state legislative bill that was passed by the legislature, how many, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And basically what it allowed municipalities to do was to submit to the state Economic Development Commission unique projects that would increase the number of tourists, out-of-state tourists, to these unique destinations. We were part of the last round. The bill sunsetted and it was not renewed. So we submitted with Northern Colorado. We were the final two that submitted. And so essentially what we do is we were the largest award. It was 121 million and some change. It's not the most efficient money, so we still aren't certain how much that 121 will actually be able to capture for a true financing. Not one of the 6 projects yet has figured out how to actually use this money because it's a very inconsistent source of revenue. But DURA's role in that, they will receive the money from the state, and then we ask for the money from DURA, and there's reporting that DURA has on top of any reporting we do. So this thing is full of reporting that we just have to live by, and we need a team like Tri-Unity that can manage that heavy lift. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yep. And then your second question was about CIG. So, again, think about how do we talk about this project? And I'm going to describe it in 3 ways. One is just pure communications, right? I mean, there's press releases, there's core requests, there's things that just as a public agency, you have to just communicate both internally and externally to keep people up to speed on what's going on. That's one piece. The second is actually marketing and promoting the project, right? We're talking about, the tagline that we've used is local impact, global reach. How do we start to market this place, right, to the world and start to get people excited about what we're going to do? And that takes a certain set of skills. And then the last is just what I'll call stakeholder engagement, and there's a long list of stakeholders that are interested in this project. And we've got to, again, have folks that help manage that process. And all 3 of those things have to work together. And again, the goal is never to build this giant team within the city. The goal is to contract for those services, because at some point we're done with that, and we're going to hand it over to ultimately the public authority, which would be responsible for that work. But in the interim, the designing and the building requires communications, outreach, and marketing and promotion. So that team was hired to help us do that work. That answer your question?
Yeah, and I just want to put a spotlight on the actual marketing and promoting the project. How do we start to market this place to the world? I hope that there'll be an interactive, a feedback loop of engagement into the CAC with CIG. I don't know if the scope of work is out there to help people get creative, because that's, I think, a rich part of what the CAC can do is bring to the grassroots level how the project is represented, because we're parking in our neighborhoods and
Yep.
history.
And that will all be part of this year's work plan, right?
So I hope people will want to do that.
It's some of the funnest work, so I hope so too. All right, so that's part one, and God, we just did a lot more stuff. So Delgany Interceptor Study, that was an RFP we issued, AECOM was selected, and that there's the set of pipes that sit on the riverbank. We are studying our ability to potentially move those pipes and how we might be able to do heat capture off those pipes as part of our energy, waste, and water system. So that they are off working, and they will report out to this group of their findings, but they have just gotten started, so there's nothing to report yet. But that's another important component of right now, because those pipes are in the way, you actually can't get to the river. Right? They sit 72 inches tall. So we got to clear the deck in terms of getting those pipes out of the way, and this study is going to determine how we might do that. Yes, sir?
This pipe study now, is this for the pipes on both sides of the river?
This is the pipes for the pipes that are within the boundaries of the campus, which are the east bank.
Only the campus?
That's correct.
John.
Maybe a little premature, but with the new president's recent announcements, will there be any, do you anticipate, or maybe it's too early to even ask, how EPA, Corps of Engineers, whatever involvement they have, is there going to be any effect, curtailment, impediments, or whatever?
I think, John, it's too early to tell.
Too early?
I mean,
I figured that.
you know, obviously, look, I mean, as a city, we're super focused on the river, and we're going to keep thinking about how we restore the health of that river, and one way you start to do that is start to remove the impediments that have created that unhealthy condition. But I think it's too early to tell where the federal government plays in that discussion as he builds his administration, so we'll see.
Okay.
Parking management study, that was issued to Walker Parking, and that is all about thinking about the system of parking. It's not just how many parking spaces, but how do we think regionally about using the 4 stations with the Gold Line, the North Metro Line, and the A Line? How do we think more broadly about all the investment that's been made in transportation so that we can get people here in multiple modes? And that includes bicycles and walking, and making it more user-friendly. So that study will start to inform those strategies. And then as part of development, we'll have to think through phasing in terms of the impacts on parking during the phasing or the actual improvements. You helped us with the Fast Lane grant. We submitted 2 separate applications. We were unsuccessful in the first, and we're still waiting on the second. And this is specifically to help fund the rail relocation, so that's through the U.S. Department of Transportation. We are waiting an announcement on that. And then last but not least, we launched a new website called that's under www.nationalwesterncenter.com. That will become the one-stop shop for how we, at least on electronic platforms, start to talk about the program and the various project components as this thing comes to life. Related projects that my office is not managing but are important, adjacencies are being led through the NDCC. One is the Washington Street study and our connections into Washington Street for the 2 bridges that we will build as part of this project, and then Heron Pond, Hiller Open Space, and how, again, this campus connects to those roughly 84 acres of open space and creating this great connections between the campus and that open space. So we will be collaborating both with Public Works and with Denver Parks and Recreation on how we make those connections happen. Okay, so that was 16. So now 17, I'm going to give you a little preview. As we've done in the past, we will be working over the next several months to formalize our work plan. And it gets a little more intense this year with bringing on the program management team. But I'm just going to give it, this list is not intended to be all-encompassing. It just starts to frame some of the things that we'll be building into our work plan. So one is obviously we will continue to focus on land acquisition, We will hopefully start to come to some arrangement with the Denver Rock Island on advancing design options for that consolidation. We will issue an RFQ for the selection of a campus placemaking team. So this will take the master plan, which is at 30,000 feet, and start to detail the campus. And I'll get more into that in a second, but you will play a very big role in helping us do that. Eric Anderson is going to run the lead on that effort as part of our team, and many of you remember Eric played that role on the master plan. So we're lucky to have him helping us do that. Establish a master site survey. We're going to do one master site survey for the site so we can start to understand master grading and all the things you have to do to set the grades for the site. And that's a pretty heavy lift for us, but one that is really important to setting the site up itself. We will complete the Delgany Interceptor study and start to advance options, costs, and funding alternatives to relocate those pipes if it's even possible, as well as how that might fit into the use of the heat capture as an energy system for the site. We will complete the parking management study. That's about a 9-month study, so it'll be towards the end of the year. That will help inform some of the campus placemaking work. We will advance the Brighton Boulevard Segment 3 design work, again to 100%, and the goal is to align that with improvements that will happen as part of RTD's work. The goal would be is that we would commence construction for the segment from 47th to Race Court in 18, probably after next year's stock show, and try to get those improvements done prior to the following stock show. And then we will begin this year initial demo of vacated structures within the campus boundaries and start to clear the site for eventual redevelopment. This year it'll only be a few, and then it'll pick up next year. So I want to just talk for a minute about placemaking. Then I don't have a slide on here, but I want to talk a little bit about the 90-day ramp up for our program management team. So again, just as this group played a big role on the original master planning, we've organized the campus placemaking into 4 buckets. So one is we are obligated under the state, the clock is already ticking with the state for us to deliver substantial progress on the RTA components, which are the yards, the livestock center, and equestrian center. So one component of the work of that team will be starting to refine the program of what's inside those buildings, their relationship to spaces, so that we can check the box with the state, and it'll help inform how the site starts to operate among those facilities. The second is what I'll call public realm, which is really about the spaces between the buildings. It's how the roads feel, it's what the pedestrian experience is, it's about how the space, the overall campus starts to act in relationship to the adjoining neighborhoods. But it starts to inform the look and feel of the place. And so an example of that, and I know there's been a lot of interest about the transit station, is one of the commitments that was made in the adopted master plan was to call the plaza right next to the transit station the Elyria Plaza. So that's just a name right now. So the campus placemaking would start to put a form to what that really means, the storytelling of Elyria, the storytelling of Swansea, and how those neighborhoods are connected to the history of the site. So that's an exercise we'll go through together, and you all play a big role in helping us bring those spaces to life. Campus design standards and guidelines. Obviously we're trying to blend old and new together, so there's a lot of work we have to do around starting to set a framework for future work on the site and in terms of how buildings will interface with one another in terms of their look and feel. So we'll establish some guidelines that will inform future design efforts for the whole campus. And then a big one for us is, and our commitment again was about really being focused on connecting back to the community. So we will start to advance the road connections, the multimodal connections through the site, Betty Cram Drive and the bridge that runs across the Platte, National Western Drive, 51st, 47th Race Court, all these streets that run around the site and through the site. We will do some additional design work to advance those efforts so that we could potentially go out for procurement earlier but block those roads in and start to get a sense of when we can make those connections specifically across the Platte over to Washington Street. So that's really high level. There's tons of detail in what that study will do, but this is at least a year, if not longer, sort of exercise that we're going to go through together, starting to bring the detail of this campus closer to the ground and set the stage for procurements starting to hopefully go out the door in 2018. Yes, sir.
The Allegheny line and the little railroad line there. How much effect, or any at all, will it have on the crossings over the Platte?
So it has an effect, right? And whether it gets consolidated or not, we're still going to have, right now, obviously we have no design yet, but there's going to be some at-grade crossings. Right now there are no protections for those crossings. I mean, right now you just walk or drive across a not very healthy set of tracks. So it's likely that we're going to have to put all the crossings in place, and I mean we're going to have to rebuild the whole system. But right now, part of this, why we want to move this detailing, is to understand where we sit today and where we need to go to make sure those crossings are safe.
Thank you.
And the bridges play a really big role in starting to define what that looks like, because the goal would be on those bridges is to make sure those bridges are high enough and long enough to accommodate, what if we were to start to pull the banks of the river back, which is another way to heal the river itself. So we're going to start to getting in some pretty heavy design discussions around those bridges, and then try to set those bridges and then connect the roads into them. But that's a big effort, and one that we want some detailing around.
I think it's crucial. Yes.
Yes, sir, it is. I'm with you, John.
Thank you.
All right, so that is campus placement. What I don't have a slide for is I just want to spend a minute, and we'll go in more detail in February, at the February meeting, but with bringing CH2 on now and having their 5 embedded members, this really is a transition point for this project. And so once they get a notice to proceed, so we went to council this last week and it's in signature right now, so they're going to get a notice to proceed here in the next couple of weeks. Once that happens, then there's a 90-day plan that gets triggered. And what will happen in that 90-day plan, and I'm going to just talk about it in general terms, is we've got to translate all the historical documentation of the work we've done to date together and start to put that into 3 big buckets. Scope, the program scope, meaning what we're going to deliver in a level of much greater detail. A schedule, right? What's the sequence of how we start to deliver this project, meeting all our requirements, and then scope, schedule, and budget, right? So translating all the estimates we've done, translating all the different revenue streams and when those revenue streams have to come in so that we end up with scope, schedule, and budget. Those become our baseline driving documents for this whole effort. So over the course of the 90 days, those documents start to get developed and that translation starts to happen. And then once the partners agree that the scope, schedule, and budget are in appropriate order, then you start to advance the full schedule for our first year work plan, all the associated milestones that will happen to advance this project, again, to meet all our requirements, and literally hundreds and hundreds of pages of detail that will trigger future procurements. How are we phasing this? How are we procuring it? All the things that just go into being smart about delivering a project of this scale. So, but that 90-day effort won't start until they get a notice to proceed. So one of the things that we've recommended is, we didn't have a EOC meeting this month, and it's not likely that we would have an EOC meeting in February because we just don't have anything to report on. But what we would do is come back to this group in February and start to give you a framework of our work plan and get feedback from the CAC on the work plan. And then in March, we'll be closer to the 90 days and then have Patrick and them really with this group and then ultimately the EOC walk them through where we are with both the 90-day plan and the work plan for 2017. So we've got a heavy lift in front of us over the next 90 days once we issue the NTP, but it really sets the project up for success by doing this process that we're about to go through. And it's best practice. I mean, you'll hear more from these guys in February, but this team that we've assembled is the best of the best in terms of delivering projects of this scale. And I think I'm done. Yep.
With getting feedback on work planning from a different, after we're briefed, I would really love it if something, and I know sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not, if there could be an advanced document with some detail, because I know that part of the goals in sequencing this for feedback into the EOC is to not have that pressure. So if there's going to be a February meeting and then an EOC meeting in March that we can, if there's either way to even have an outline or something that orients us.
I think
Maybe the pressure's off enough to do that.
no, and I think that's the goal. I mean, again, we're moving into a very different phase of this work, and I think the role that this group plays in getting materials to you in advance, giving you enough time to provide appropriate feedback is a goal of ours. And so there's some work we have to do with CH2 in blending those teams to get ready for that. But I'm willing to commit that we will get you something in advance so that we can have a good discussion in February and then a good discussion in March. Yes?
What is the timeline for creating the authority that will govern this? And when is that when will we know that, and what role will this body play in that?
So the governance for the public authority, its role is to ultimately to operate the campus. The lawyers, so we have city attorneys that are leading that process in collaboration with lawyers from the university and from the Western Stock Exchange Association. They are working through a framing document that would have described the structure of what's the right corporate structure, organizing structure for that entity. That will include board composition and all those things. And right now, I think the goal is, and I'm not part of that work. I'm focused on getting it built. But the goal is to have something ready to stand up if we need to by summer.
So what role will this body play in shaping that, or somehow having access to that? Because right now this is just a report out committee, and I think we've addressed this before.
Well, so this Drew serves as a standing member of the Executive Oversight Committee right now, and certainly one of the things that would be put in front of the mayor is the neighborhood continuing to have representation on the future authority. That's one part of building out the board composition for how the operating authority would work. But I can't speak to that now.
So you're saying it goes to the mayor to
Correct.
decide if the community should be part of?
No, for the functioning authority to function appropriately, it's got to have a board composition. And I think the mayor has been clear from day one about having neighborhood representation on the board. But we have to present a structure to him that he feels comfortable works for the long term, because it's not just about today, it's about what happens 20 or 30 or 40 years from now, and making sure you have a sustainable entity that meets the interests of all parties.
And is separate from the city, correct?
That is correct.
So what is this committee's role in shaping whatever proposal is given to the mayor?
I don't have an answer for you because that's not a part of the effort I'm working on.
So our role is to sign off on letters asking for environmental benefits and increased safety and environmental education and the historical designation, but we don't have a role in shaping the authority that will govern this or any other.
So that's not what I'm saying. And you weren't here for the original master planning process. And many of the folks that were in this room played a huge role in helping shape the eventual master plan. The master plan was better for the input that this group provided. We're getting ready for round 2 of that. This is 2 things. One, we all have to be proud about what the place feels like. This committee plays a huge role, this group plays a huge role in making sure that happens. The second is obviously how it functions, operates as a place. That is not something I'm personally focused on. And, you know, if you want to report out in February, I'm happy to bring the folks that are working on that. But I hear you, but I just can't answer your question because it's not what I'm focused on.
Understandable. Then I personally would like to not be listed on any documents, including this letter going forward, that are asking for entities to do things and getting all of our community to sign on as supporters when this entity has no authority over shaping the way our community unfolds. And this entity has no authority to ask for support in other things that we want within our community. We've never had the opportunity to get the CAC to sign on to any letters opposing the expansion of I-70. We've never had this body endorse any other thing that we've brought to the table that affects the environment in our community. So please do not include me on that. And if that means not including me formally on the CAC, please do not.
So noted. John?
I feel that we are pressing that thin line that I referred to in several past meetings. And Candy, I'm going to ask you personally to reconsider your request because we are I feel at the threshold of making things happen now. And I understand where you're coming from, and I ask you this in all respect of your position. But we have to understand, as a group that has been working together, that we can't start splintering, not yet. It's not the time, and certainly this isn't the place. We need to make sure that the governance board understands and accepts your specific concerns, which I share. But I'm asking you, this is not the time. We need to have a solid, united position with this railroad, especially now, in view of the political situation that might develop. They're going to call on us to do maybe some extraordinary things beyond what we've already done. And I think now's the time that we got to show togetherness, and I really want you to reconsider your position, Candy. I respect your position, and I know why you're taking that, but now's not the time. I think maybe 6 months from now, with the governance issue coming at hand, will be the time to change from bark to bite. Please bear with us. We need to stick together, and we got to get this thing through. Thank you.
No, I have to agree with Candy within a point. You know, we've asked for support in a lot of different things here from this committee. And it's either been, you know, kind of set back in a situation where, okay, we'll discuss it either later, or there's been no position whatsoever. So what we're saying is, you're saying that we've been here together putting this thing together, all right? And it's a two-way street. It's support from this committee and from the National Western, as well as us supporting, you know, this whole effort going through. And, you know, when 2C needed to go through, we all got behind it completely. And then here, a few months ago, I sat in this meeting and I listened to everyone here explaining to us about how much power we had here, which was absolutely nothing. So to a degree, I really do understand that frustration there, because I want to see this thing go. I want to see this come together. It is not something that I want to put a block into or anything else. But this is a two-way street. The community will be here for you, and then you need to be here for the community. So for her to ask us to have some power to carry this thing forward, we're going into the next phase now too. So let's move our phase forward as well, not only just the National Western's concerns.
There has been discussion in the past on the Center Advisory Committee about wanting to have a very early stages entry point into the conversation about what the permanent authority becomes. And I think that's really critical. Kelly, I think it would be appropriate certainly to have somebody report out at the February meeting. I'm joining a voice to ask for that. It's also, there's gray areas about how the board can be constituted as far as representation. So that's an area I think should be being discussed in this group. So I think that there's, and helping all of us go beyond just the lay level of language around what these authorities are. I think if people want to study a case in point, that you might want to look at the Botanical Gardens process toward developing their authority and some of the things that went over there. There's a lot of lessons coming out of that. I also just want to say with Proposition 2C, as you know, folks know, I worked my heart out on that, and I became staff as part of that. And that was out of a strong conviction that regardless of what else happens with the I-70 or Central 70 project or the stormwater situation, this project should thrive, and this project, the National Western Center campus, should be committed to being able to create a measurable increase in the quality of life and opportunity for the constituencies in the neighborhoods. The National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee was formed to assure that the Globeville, Leary, and Swansea neighborhood plans were well considered as part of the mission and design, accomplishment, and accountability of the National Western Center. So I think it's wholly appropriate that any issues coming from any of the constituency within the neighborhoods that are interrelated with the National Western Center impact be taken very seriously. I also wanted to acknowledge that there is not complete consensus among the neighborhoods constituencies around a lot of impacts on a lot of things, largely due to a lack of equal level of information about what's going on and how it all works, partly because people's lives don't necessarily support being able to immerse themselves. So there's a privileged few of us in this room, and we have a lot of work to get the word out. And so as we form the authority, what I'm hoping for is we can have a much broader exploration into the constituencies in these adjacent neighborhoods to figure out how to best reinforce them on this authority. So I look forward to a really transparent process. I hope that all that is happening with the lawyers, et cetera, the various legalities and things like that, because the board and the definition of board responsibilities and the manner of reporting and the manner of engaging and all that kind of thing are things that we can discuss for authorities. And I think we have a lot to, I have a lot to learn, and I just, would say that's 6 months is a quick, 6 months goes by quick, so, let's get it on the top of the agenda.
Let me clarify. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was getting the mic for you.
No, you're gonna. No, I just want to clarify something because I want to make sure that nobody, Candy, you're not left with a misconception, because even though I think Kelly was clear what he was saying, I could see how it could be translated. The authority cannot be created just by Mayor Hancock by himself. This is going to require, and hopefully Councilman Brooks, you were about ready to talk about that, this is going to require a pretty strong dialogue to go through City Council. The National Western has been working with its own internal lawyers internally, along with, and CSU also has too, because each entity is constituted differently. The National Western is a private not-for-profit. They've got some limited powers. CSU is, of course, has the mantle of the state. So our understanding is, and the National Western has not seen anything concerning a structure of an authority or governance, because there are some institutional issues that have to be addressed. I hear you guys, and I will, hopefully Councilman Brooks will shed some more light on this. We will make sure we will take it back internally and state that. I've always assumed that when the, quote, thrust of the authority is floated, that it goes through this process just like the master plan did, just like a lot of things did, for input and consideration, because the authority cannot be formed just by Mayor Hancock deciding. It has to go through a pretty rigorous process at the Denver City Council. So I just want to make sure that you understand that it's not like Michael Hancock can just sign an executive order and say, boom, because there's too many charter issues and ordinance issues that have to be in place. So I just want to make sure that you understood that. Councilman?
Yeah, I was just going to echo that. This is going to be an incredibly public process. So I would propose the next time here that we put this up for a vote. If it is overwhelmingly supported, we put a letter together to City Council, put a letter together to the mayor, put a letter together to the National Western Center, and just say we're advocating for a community seat on the board. I mean,
Well, I don't want to be singular necessarily, that's preemptive.
okay, but you get my idea that we have a conversation. We have a conversation, and we put a letter together to let folks know what the National Western Citizens Advisory Committee is recommending.
Well, we may not, let's not jump to recommendation until we've got a process of discussion.
Yeah.
I just want to make a really brief comment, just a reminder, and Candy, just kind of to emphasize that the precursor to the authority right now is the EOC. And we have a seat, a voting member seat on the EOC. So, to characterize it that we don't have any say at all, I think is a mischaracterization, because we certainly do. And I'm sure Drew can speak to that as well, that he's a full member of that group.
Did you want to respond, Drew? Or?
I feel like I think that my role on the EOC is something that I've thought a lot about, and there are some issues as to just what this committee does and what I do on the EOC. But I think, Candy, the question of governance is so important. This is a public entity. Taxpayer dollars are funding this. And this was sold to the public for the benefits that this whole effort would give to the community. And we have to make sure that we enshrine that in the authority and the governance. So that is a very important dialogue. I will also just mention that I do recognize some frustration that the communities of Globeville, Elyria, and Swansea really are stepping up for this project. And I think what the people from the city need to hear is that citizens in Globeville, Elyria, Swansea are asking, what do we get? I mean, that's kind of, I think that's something that's where we really, there's a lot of frustration there, where we feel still somehow we're getting the short end of the stick somehow. And I sense that frustration inside this committee and outside too, from a lot of members here. What is being given to these communities? And so that,
I'll leave it there. I tend to agree with our councilman in that I think we have to take certain steps. I totally agree with Candy's position. My concern now is just timing. And maybe I'm an idealist in that sense, but we can't allow this committee to become splintered, at least not just yet. When the time comes, believe me, I don't want splinters. I want the damn chopping block. And I'm saying it's not the time now. We've got work to do. I understand the frustration. Frustration is multifaceted because of other projects around. But I've always maintained our goal here is primarily to support the efforts of the National Western in getting this project moving. Everything else, it behooves us to work twice as hard. Candy, the residents here, others, to make sure that we don't allow ourselves to become disoriented. Don't let frustration overtake us. But more importantly, is not lose focus of what our goal should be here. The governance will be worked out. The silk stocking procedures are going on now with the attorneys and the board of directors, whomever they have. That always takes place. What we have to do is to make sure at the time when it comes to the forefront to deal with it. But we have to deal with that in a strong position of credible representation from the community. All of us here that are community representatives. And if we stick to that, I'm sure that I don't believe that the governing board would be outlandish to ignore us. And I think our councilman can play a role in doing that with us, not for us.
Any more questions for Kelly? Okay. Our next update will be from the NDCC, and that will be Michael Sapp. And Sapp, here's the microphone. I think you'll need it. Oh, he's not there.
Everybody cheer up. Can we all stand up and take a deep breath? We're all living and breathing, and no one had to usher us in, and no one has passed away. All right, everyone's looking good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So my name is Michael Sapp. I'm wearing the NDCC hat. I am the Community Affairs Director for the NDCC office. My job tonight is to talk about 3 projects. And I really believe these 3 projects are celebratory projects, one in which the community really shaped, and we're seeing progress on. And I'll start with Brighton Boulevard. But I want to give a shout out to people like Ann Hayes and Mickey Zeppelin and the Rhino Arts District for their steadfast advocacy for really fighting for improvements along that corridor. Today, you see that work at hand. I mean, so we're talking Brighton Boulevard from 29th Avenue to 44th. The technical term is segments 1 and 2. But that construction is underway. And for those who were able to make it to the October 13th kickoff event at Great Divide, you're now seeing construction along that corridor. What I'm going to do is kind of break down a couple of updates for you. But for those who are not receiving updates along Brighton Boulevard, please see me after the meeting so that we can get you on our distribution list so that you can govern yourselves accordingly as you travel Brighton Boulevard. So if you have not seen along Broadway going to Central 70, traffic has switched to 1 lane between 29th Avenue and 31st Street. The pedestrian access has moved to the east sidewalk. You have temporary traffic signal installations at 38th Street intersection, northbound and southbound lane closures. You're seeing more installations of no parking signs. You're seeing temporary lane restrictions from 35th to 38th Street during utility relocations and potholes. So bear with us is what I'm really saying. The tunnel or the light at the end of the tunnel is in sight. And I just want to remind you that we are adding those medians, those sidewalks, all of the things that folks asked for. So just bear with us during that Brighton construction. And again, it's from segment 1 to segment 2, 29th to 44th Street. So that's Brighton Boulevard. You heard Kelly touch on briefly Heron Pond. You know, I kind of tapped a couple of folks when I walked in because I really want to hear from them. The Heron Pond master plan, it was recognized and studied during the Globeville neighborhood plan, but it's 80 acres of open space and parkland within historic Globeville. And this master plan effort is really about re-envisioning that 80 acres. We had a great steering committee meeting a couple of weeks ago. We had folks like AE and Vern and Dave participate. I think that meeting was on January 17th at the Stapleton Recreation Center. We have a public meeting on February 22nd at Garden Place Elementary School. I would strongly encourage you to attend that meeting. We have the great Celia Vanderloop who will be coming out to the next Heron Pond Steering Committee meeting on February 15th at Stapleton Recreation Center from 5:30 to 7:30, really talking about environmental challenges and opportunities at Heron Pond. But when you think...
I thought that was a Garden Place Academy.
No, the steering committee is at Stapleton Recreation Center, on February 15th. Yep. So I can clarify, steering committee for Heron Pond is February 15th from 5:30 to 7:30 at Stapleton Recreation Center. The first public meeting is February 22nd from 5:30 to 7:30 at Garden Place Elementary School. Again, if you're not receiving those updates, see me afterwards so that we can add you to that distribution list. And for that public meeting, I'm asking all CAC members to bring a friend, bring a neighbor, bring one of your RNO members so that we can pack the house. But more importantly, our project teams can begin to understand what are the issues, what are the challenges in those neighborhoods. Nancy, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did.
Can we get a mic over there so that we can hear Nancy?
I think I have, well, my voice.
We want to make sure that it gets recorded, though. We want to make sure for public record that your comment gets recorded.
Would you speak to what the format of the public meeting is? Is it where it's an open meeting where we ask questions and get information, or is it you go here, you go there, and it's those euphemistic one-on-ones?
So I received some brutal but friendly email correspondence from Mickey Zeflin, and I will assure you that it will be open house and question and answer. In a group. I think it is important for folks to hear what their peers, what their neighbors are saying at these public meetings. Duly noted. The last project that I'll give you an update on is Washington Street. Again, it was identified in the Globeville neighborhood plan. Boundaries from that really go from South Platte River to the county line, right around 52nd Street. But really looking at multi-modes of transportation, looking at how we can increase more private investment along that corridor, to really identifying some of the constraints along Washington Street. That project is running slightly behind Heron Pond, but the goal is to have our first public meeting in April. Again, if you're not getting those updates, let me know, and I will be sure to make sure that you get that information. Just so you know, the project manager for Washington Street is Karen Good. She is being assisted by Lisa Zoller. And then for Heron Pond, the project manager is Ray Eads from Parks and Rec, and Todd Winskowski, the deputy director for NDCC, and they are both being assisted by Lisa Zoller. That's really it from NDCC perspective. We're going to continue to plug along and look forward to seeing you all next month. I'll pause and entertain any questions or comments at this time. AE.
Yeah, I just want to, anybody else?
AE, can you hold on 1 second so that the mic can get to you?
Anybody listening to this tape or at this meeting that wants to get to any of these meetings, I just want to say, please double check, because I'm looking at an email that came from Zoller Consulting 9 hours ago, that the February 15th meeting at 5:30 is at Garden Place Academy. That's different from what's on here, so that's okay, things get confused. But there's 2 messages out, and it really does need to be clarified, Michael. So
Yeah.
if anybody wants to, and I don't know where the February 22nd meeting is. The last I heard, they hadn't confirmed the place. Just everybody check, that's all.
Absolutely, duly noted. If you signed in today, what I'll do is I'll work with Liz Adams to send out the corrected information so that you can govern yourselves accordingly. Once you get that email from Liz, I'm putting a personal charge out to everybody here. Bring a friend, tell about 5 people to be at that steering committee meeting and public meeting.
That's the same message that I received.
Okay.
The 15th meeting is to
15.
At Garden Place School.
Okay.
In the library for a presentation by Celia on the environmental.
So this handout might be incorrect. Again, I'll get that corrected information to Liz and then we'll send it out through the CAC. Yes, sir.
The gas line impact on Washington Street.
Yes, sir.
Can you get us an update on that, please?
Yeah, so for those that don't know what Dave is referring to, it's the Xcel Energy gas line pipeline. It runs from Adams County and it's designed to run through Glowville. With the population increase, with increased development around the National Western Stock Show, it's a public safety and quality of life investment. What we know is that it's Xcel's project. They come to the city with 3 alternatives for their gas pipeline. One was along Pennsylvania Street. The other one was along, I believe, Cherokee Street. And then the other alternative was along Washington Street. I have some news, but I can't share with you at this time. But what I have heard from people like, Vern and others is that if we could work with Xcel Energy to move their gas pipeline to Washington Street, leverage their gas line pipeline with what we're doing along Washington Street, we might be able to leverage additional dollars. I have taken that request to the appropriate folks at Xcel Energy to look into. We'll have more to say on that at our first public meeting in April.
Thank you.
Yep.
If this is comment time, I have a comment.
Go, Betty.
There has been a
We can make it comment time.
given to me that we are to ask about the name that is being put on the RTD light rail. It right now, presently, I said it is National Western. Since we are in the Elyria district, they've asked that the discussion be held in this group that it be called National Western-Elyria or something to the effect. Since it will be in Elyria, I think it's very important. This is a nice little neighborhood. It was platted back in the 1890s. And it's something that we should not forget. There have been a lot of things happen. I can remember one time we had a rodeo out where the post office is right now. Some man by the name of Bull Kennedy brought his livestock in and everybody sat around the edge and they had a regular rodeo right there. So this is, it happened about 2 or 3 times that I remember. So this is an area that has had a lot of history to it, and I think it's very important that we include Elyria. In fact, I really wonder about the name Elyria. As I travel around the area, I have only seen one place that it says Elyria. I think this should go in the history department and be put, because it is at the top of the door where the man that sells the little tamales, and it says Elyria. I've seen no other signs of Elyria, and I think it's really important that we really stress that we are Elyria. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
Okay. Thank you for being our band.
Liz.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just to comment to endorse what Betty Cram said. She made a suggestion, is there any procedure for this group to go ahead and do an endorsement? I don't know to whom it goes or
RTD.
Whatever.
It has to go to the regional transportation.
Okay, so what's the procedure for this committee and this group to do such as what Betty has suggested?
As I think in past, there are times when letters have been initiated, if we want to do something, if you all want to talk about and think through doing something to send to RTD, the entity who's got process and procedures for naming stations is RTD. So that's what we would have to do.
They didn't like it because they said it's been in effect for 4 years now, and we're too late. They didn't want to make any changes at all.
But my understanding with some of the correspondence I've been is that your RTD representative has endorsed this in some way. So I don't know whether we bring the RTD representative to the next meeting or we have a letter to have discussion to be able to do that, or have somebody from RTD be here. We're more than happy to call RTD and be able to do that.
I think there needs to be, some action step taken, and if you are the entity, either responsible.
We're facilitating. We will call RTD. We will bring it on the agenda if you guys want to have it on the agenda and have a discussion about it. We will make sure that RTD is here at our next meeting.
Are people in favor of that?
So, do we have consensus on that we're going to do that? Did you?
Again, if I can, just to remind, to Betty's point, again, if you go back to the master plan, irrespective of what might happen with RTD, is that the adopted master plan already recognizes, if you go to, I think it's page 88 or 89, if memory serves me right, it actually calls out naming the plaza, which is not on the RTD land, after Elyria, so the Elyria Plaza. So if you think about people getting off the train, walking off the train and walking onto the site, we would tell the story of Elyria at that plaza. So all the history as your sense of arrival. So that's already in the adopted master plan, and that would be one of the many things that we do with the campus placemaking team to tell that story. And again, this group would have a big role in doing that. And then we can do, because the beauty of a big campus like this is it's got lots of front doors, right? So if you think about people arriving to the site, we could do a way to tell the story of the neighborhoods as people arrive. So that would be that's just an example of one of the things we'll go through together as part of the placemaking.
Any other public comments, announcements? Tom?
I had...
Here, Tom, we need you to use the microphone, please. Thanks.
I had 7 announcements. One is at our last North Neighborhoods Democratic Council meeting, we had passed a resolution about the school bus lot across the street from the National Western Center site in the train stop, which historically was a bus stop for DPS. They had almost 150 buses there. And for 45 years, the neighborhood put up with the buses coming and going and idling and starting their motors and everything. And so the neighborhood really wants something besides simply a parking structure there. And the resolution had that it should have active retail on that site, as well as parking structures. So anyway, I wanted to mention that. Number 2, the Colorado Trust came out with a study last month showing that the kids in my neighborhood are 5 times more likely to have Saturnism, which is lead poisoning, than anyone else in Denver. Now there happens to be an explanation in my mind for that, and that is the fact that we're in a Vasquez Boulevard I-70 Superfund site that was inundated by lead from the smelters for 90 years. And although there was cleanup done, it wasn't really protective. Now back in 2009, I started a group called Global Greenfields Campus that was envisioning this whole area that's a brownfields as a study area for a greenfields. And that has not really been included in the plans here. But you can't overlook the fact that we have lead and arsenic and cadmium and mercury and various other things here in these neighborhoods, and you can't just act like it all went away. Because it's here, and it was one of the 5 kids in 5 times as many kids that had lead poisoning, you'd probably be a little bit worried. I wonder how many people in this neighborhood, or in this group here, has a kid living in this neighborhood. You have, Albus? All right, well, good. Something might happen. But we could expand this context of this group from merely next-gen agriculture to global green fields. So keep that in mind as a possibility. You can make money figuring out how to clean this stuff up. Maybe it's a good idea to do that. Number 3, 48th and Race. I find out today the 400 units they're going to build there with the Urban Land Institute is 560 units. Well, it was 400 units when it was presented in the neighborhood. Somewhere in between, it became 560. Well, it means 160 more families living in the neighborhood than we thought. On top of the other 400 families, on top of what we have right now, which is 200 dwelling units. So you're going to triple our population here, and no one even notified us except every block. You can see it there. Well, this comes down to the loop bus and the bridge. Well, we wanted a loop bus at 48th where the street should connect underneath the UP to Swansea to get the people from Swansea to the train stop at Brighton. Well, the city's building a pedestrian bridge at 47th and saying that will solve the problem. Meanwhile, another 160 units going into our neighborhood that we didn't know about. Well, you're going to have a lot more traffic from a lot more reasons when you're doing these infill developments here. And you're still going to all cross the street at 47th and York and sit there and wait while they stack up the trains from the UP yards at 40th 3 or 4 times a day for 20 minutes at a whack. So we still don't have it looks like we're not going to get a loop bus. We've got a pedestrian bridge instead. But you can't get your car across or a bus. Now all these other people in the 560 units, they might be a little bit better off if there was a loop bus because they're gonna, some of them have cars and certainly want to get around. But I just want to point out, it's time to think seriously about the loop bus because we're getting stuck with another 160 units, whether we like it or not. They already cut the deal.
Tom, before you go on, because I know you have 4 more points, because I think you're in 3, you have 4 more from what I can count. I just want you, if you could be as succent as possible.
I'll try to be as,
because
well, these kind of segue down through.
Okay, I understand, and, but I just need you to be a little bit more succinct.
Right, I'll try to bullet point it a little better here. Now, where they're putting the Elyria Station in Phase 3 Brighton Boulevard, in the Elyria 2020 Vision Plan, we have a dog leg in Brighton Boulevard and 2 stoplights. If you're there at the race court trying to pull on the Brighton Boulevard right now, you've got these big trucks coming down Brighton Boulevard with virtually no traffic speed limit, roaring down there. You're looking both ways, and it goes like this. And you're going to put a train stop there with hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of people trying to get across Brighton Boulevard all the time, every 15 minutes or 10. So look back at the Elyria 2020 Vision Plan and possibly put it in a dogleg in Brighton Boulevard there because now Stock Show has bought J&B Auto, so you can do it. See, we're going to work it out with them. Now, the last thing was North Neighborhoods Democratic Council meets at my house on Sunday at 6 o'clock. 5001 National Western Drive this coming Sunday. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Terrence, can I just want to, there's 3 quick things I want to respond to because they're relevant to this project. One is the DPS bus barn site. You go back and look at the master plan. That site has been included in the master plan from day 1. And it's got substantial, it was a dump, right? And it's, if you go over there today, it's collapsing on itself. We are in active negotiations to acquire that from the district, and at the city's expense, we would clean that site. And we agree with you, Tom, that active retail should be there. And I think, Candy, somewhat to your question and others, is how do we leverage a big project like this to bring active retail to these neighborhoods by bundling it with the campus itself? So, and those are in the adopted neighborhood plans, as well as, Tom, the work you've done. So that's an example of where I think we can leverage that project. But regardless who buys that piece of land, it's got substantial cleanup issues. And so one of the things we're talking about the district is the city stepping in and acquiring that and taking care of that environmental. So that's one. The second is your bus loop idea. As part of the transportation plan, we've talked actively about the creation of a circulator system that would link the North Metro line station to the other 3 stations. So the station on 41st and Fox, on the Gold Line, as well as the 2 lines along the A line. So this idea that you could have active connections, otherwise you have to home run back to Denver Union Station. So as you start to bring activation to this region of the city, we could have a loop bus, using your term, to connect those stations and move people around this region. So taking a very regional approach. The last is the segment 3 design work. We'll start to think about how we create a more safe roadway. So, and all that's going to be put in front of this committee for review as the design work commences. So I just wanted to make sure that we hear you and we're addressing aspects of what you've described as part of our planning efforts in 2017.
Vern? Thank you.
Okay, and I just have a couple of quick items here. We had that economic opportunity study that was done, which we were supposed to have had someone come back here and do a presentation in reference to the last of the findings and the completion of that. I'd like to see if we can find out maybe the next meeting or in the near next meetings, we can have them come back in and finalize their report on that portion of it.
The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. It's easy. I gotta get some marketing. The next thing would be, we had talked a little bit about this, the loss of the 7-Eleven and the grocery store over here in the area due to the development of the National Western, and what could be done to replace that. Now, we had someone come in and give us like a short version of, what could be done, but they were supposed to come back and finish their presentation on that, and I'd like to see that maybe scheduled like one of the next meetings as well.
Yeah. Got it?
We can, that's Blake Angelo, who led that piece of it, and then our OED led Next Gen Ag. So that's actually a really good pairing. So maybe if we can get them here in February, that'd be a good double whammy in terms of those.
Thank you.
It's on.
One more time, I have the petition here for the renaming or the naming of the park across the river here, and we're going to name it Carpio Sanguinet Park. I have the petition here. If you live in Denver, you can sign it. Sorry, folks, don't. Okay, I'll be here. Come and sign it, please.
Do you have to be registered to vote? No, right?
No, I said live in Denver.
Okay. Just make sure everybody knows that. Don't want anybody to sign.
Anyone else?
Anyone else?
Okay.
All right, guys.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks so much.
Drive safely.
Ron, can we have heat next month? Can we have?